So the thing here is that a lot of people have been concerned lately about the fact that they might be audited because of Form 7202. So in today's show, I'm going to break it down for you and give you all the paper, all the documentation, all the evidence, all the things you need to have ready so that if, God forbid, you get audited, you are ready. All right? Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Welcome back, folks, to another edition of the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show. How are you today? I hope you are doing fantastic. I'm doing marvelous, if you were to ask me. If you are doing as great as I am, go grab a cup of coffee or tea or vodka and let's roll. In today's conversation, I want to talk about Form 7202. We already covered this form in another show, so I'm not going to go at length into the form itself, but we're just going to have a conversation about the audit triggers. So I'm showing you right now on the screen Form 7202, but most importantly, the instructions, because everything I'm telling you today is coming straight from the instructions, the official instructions that the IRS has put on their website. So you have the instructions there, and we are going to focus on three things. So number one, who may file Form 7202? So we're actually talking about eligibility here. And number two, on line one, you have a series of things that I will be talking about, which is credit for sick leave for certain self-employed individuals. And the third box, the third table that we're showing you right now on the screen, that's line two. And this is basically those three elements will constitute the cornerstone of today's conversation. One thing I want to say is that while you filling out Form 7202, if a day meets the requirements for both the credit for sick leave for certain self-employed individuals in Part 1 and the credit for family leave for certain self-employed individuals in Part 2, remember, you can only count the day once. Do not include the same day for both credits. Also, do not include days that you already included on line 1. So I'm showing you right now on the screen here, we have Form 7202. Again, we already covered this form. I'm not going to go into details here, but basically on line 3, you need to enter the number of days taken into account for determining the qualified sick leave equivalent amount. Remember that the equivalent amount cannot exceed 10 days over all tax years. On line 7, very important here, enter your net earnings from self-employment. Line 15, you need to enter the amount of qualified sick leave wages subject to the $511 per day limit you received from an employer. And line 16, you need to enter the amount of qualified sick leave wages subject to the $200 per day limit you received from an employer. And here we have, you can see here in Part 2, showing you on the screen, line 25, you need to enter the number of days you are unable to perform services as a self-employed individual because of certain COVID-19 related care you provided to a son or daughter. And line 26, you have to put your net earnings from self-employment. And line 31, you need to enter the amount of qualified family leave wages subject to the $200 per day limit you receive from an employer. All right, so basically, folks, in today's conversation, there are 7 things you need to prove. There are 7 things you need to prove to the IRS if you ever get audited. The first thing is you need to prove that you are eligible to file Form 7202. Now, who may file that form? The rule says eligible self-employed individuals are entitled to claim qualified sick and family leave equivalent credits if you regularly carried on a trade or business within the meaning of Section 1402, and you would have been eligible to receive qualified sick leave wages under the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act if you had been an employee of an employer other than yourself. So we're showing you right now here. So this statement has 2 sections. First, you need to carry on a trade or business within the meaning of Section 1402. We're showing you right now on the screen the what that particular section means, and this is courtesy of the Cornell Law School. So we're showing you 1402, 1402C, and 1402H. But we're not going to get into legalese here. If you have a job, if you have a business, if you have a side gig, that you are carrying on regularly, then you're fine. As long as you're not getting into any kind of any kind of a dodgy business, or sometimes some kind of adult, what I call the prohibited industries. You have adult or marijuana, you should be fine. As long as you are in a quote unquote legit business, you should be fine. And one thing so we're showing you right now on the screen, we are showing you three snapshots. So the first one is 1402C. The second one also is from 1402C, and the third one is about 1402H. And again, all those snapshots are from the Cornell Law School. We want to thank them for providing this resource to us. So you need to demonstrate that you have a regular business, and then you need to demonstrate that you are actually generating money from that. All right. So the thing here is that to determine that you have a business, the IRS has 9 factors to actually ascertain whether your business is a legit business, or a hobby. So there are 9 factors. We're going to put them on the screen right now. So the IRS looks at how you carry on the activity, your expertise, your time and effort in carrying out the activity, the expectation that assets used in the activity, such as land, may appreciate in value, your success in other activities, your history of income or losses from the activity, the relative amounts of the profits and losses, your financial status, and whether the activity provides recreation or involves personal motives. So those are the 9 factors that the IRS looks at. And now, so after you actually demonstrate that you are self-employed, you need to demonstrate that you generate income from your activity. All right. So how can you actually demonstrate that? There are several things you can do. You can show pay stubs if you derive a regular salary from it. You can show proof of income letter. You can show your tax documents for last year, for the last 2 or 3 years. You can show a Social Security proof of income letter. You can actually show also a profit and loss statement or ledger documentation. You can show bank statements. There is a constellation of documents you can show to substantiate that you actually are generating money from your business. And if you are lucky to have a tax software tool like QuickBooks, you can actually pull that data directly from the software. So that's number 1. Number 2, how to prove the number of days you are subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. Now, there are a lot of ways you can prove that. You can actually show clips of newspaper articles. You can take snapshots of government's websites, provide news releases by federal, state, or local authorities. You can contact your city mayor's office. You can contact your state or city's archives office. You can contact the United States National Archives and Records Administration. You can actually even go on social media to see if there are any release. So the bottom line here is that anything that you can provide to the IRS or you can have ready that shows an official announcement about the COVID-19 order, you should be fine. All right. And number 3, how do you prove that you were advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to concerns related to COVID-19? So there are 2 things you need to show. You need to show a valid healthcare provider's notice, for example, a doctor's note for the specified period. So here we're talking about April 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. So the first thing, you need to show a valid healthcare provider's notice. And the second thing is you need to demonstrate the validity of the healthcare provider's credentials. In other words, we want to make sure that the IRS wants to make sure the doctors that you are quoting in your on your tax return, that doctor is legit. And there are several ways to actually do that. You provide the name, the hospital, clinic, or lab, the address, the phone number, the email, the website of the providers. And there are several ways to do this. And you can actually contact the doctors or the medical institution, the hospital, so they can provide that data to you. But if it's not possible, you can get the data by yourself. So you can go on a website such as docinfo.org, or you can go to a FSMB. So that's the Federation of State Medical Boards website to check the basics. You can find the doctor's board certifications, education, states with active licenses, and any actions against the physician. All right, so we're showing here, and the cost for the FSMB website, it's about $9 per physician, and that includes 12 months of monitoring. And so on Doc Info, you can have everything about the physician. You have the license, the board certification, the medical school and residency, the actions, the age of the doctor, the length of practice, the hospital affiliations, complaints or malpractice action, involvement in research, personality and attitude, and so on and so forth. So this is basically what it is. You're trying to get due diligence, trying to get data, intel on the doctor. Either way, you better have that info anyway, because if the IRS asks for it or if they start looking for it, they're going to dig anyway. So you might as well just do the work beforehand. I'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, folks, to another section of the Awesome Sweetie Kiwi Show. I'm still having a conversation with you about the kind of paperwork you better have ready before the IRS audits you regarding Form 7202. Now, number 4, how do you prove that you are experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and seeking a medical diagnosis yourself? Now, you need to show a valid doctor's note for the specified period. You need to demonstrate the doctor's credentials, and you need to show evidence of exchanges between you and your physician if you're not able to go to the hospital or to his or her office. All right, so this is very important for the doctor's credentials. What I just said earlier applies here, so I don't have to repeat it. But if you were not able to go to a hospital or to a clinic to ascertain your COVID-19 situation, you can show emails or a proof of any kind of exchange that you have had with the hospital. It could be email, it could be a letter. You have to have that ready so you can show it to the IRS auditor. And one thing I want to say here is that, listen, if a day meets the requirements, I've said that before, but I'm going to repeat it. If the day meets the requirement for both the credit for sick leave for certain self-employed individuals in Part 1 and the credit for family leave for certain self-employed individuals in Part 2, you can only count the day once. Do not include the same day for both credits. Number 5, how to prove that you are caring for an individual who was subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. Now, you must show, there are a couple of things you can do. You must show evidence of the government's order applicable from April 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. You must also show that the government's order applied to the person you are caring for. And you must show that the person you are caring for is incapable of self-care owing to age, disease, or a physical impairment. And you have to show that you had to care for the person either by necessity or by law. In other words, only you had to do it. Only you could do it. And basically, within the meaning of the law, incapable of self-care means that the person cannot perform normal, everyday activities to care for themselves. And these activities would include being able to bathe themselves, dress themselves, or prepare their own meals, among other things. And physical impairment within the context of the Internal Revenue Code means a disability that limits a person's physical capacity to move, coordinate actions, or perform physical activities. It is also accompanied by difficulties in one or more of the following areas. So we have a physical and motor tasks, independent movement, performing daily living functions. Number 6, let's talk about how you can prove to the IRS that you are caring for an individual who was advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to concerns related to COVID-19. Now, there are a couple of things you can do, all right? You must show the healthcare provider's notice. It could be a doctor's note from April 1st through December 31st, 2020. You need to show that the doctor's note applied to the person you are caring for. You got to show that the person you are caring for is incapable of self-care owing to age, disease, or physical impairment. You have to show that you had to care for the person either by necessity or by law. And last but not the least, you need to demonstrate the validity of the healthcare provider's credentials. I already went through that, so you know what to do here. Number 7, how do you prove that you are caring for a son or daughter because the school or place of care for that child was closed or the child care provider for that child was unavailable due to COVID-19 precautions. Now, the thing here is that you have to show evidence of the government's order applicable from April 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. You got to show that the government's order applied to the area where the school or place of care for that child is located. You got to show that the government's order applied to the school or place of care for that child. You got to show that you were unable to find an alternative place of care for your child that was satisfactory to you. And last but not the least, you got to show that during the applicable period, we're talking here about what? April 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. So during that period, you were unable to find a person to care for your child under conditions that were satisfactory to you. What does that mean? That means that basically you couldn't find any person, anybody who could do the job, at prices that you could afford, or someone who actually could do the job better than yourself. And remember that son or daughter, so a son or daughter must generally be under 18 years of age or incapable of self-care because of a mental or a physical disability rather. So this is basically it. So the thing here is that, so this is how you prove that you are caring for a son or daughter because the school or place of care was closed. All right, folks, this is it. So today I gave you actually the 7 ways. There are only 7 ways the IRS can audit you when it comes to Form 7202, and I gave you the 7 ways and all the tactics you got to have ready so that you can actually be comfortable and not really worry about the government actually auditing you. All right. Okay. So just to recap here, I explained to you how you can prove that you are eligible to file Form 7202. In other words, how you can demonstrate that you are self-employed. And you can also demonstrate that you generate income from your activity. And I showed you how to prove that you were actually, you can prove the number of days you were subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. I also showed you how to prove you were advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to concerns related to COVID-19. I showed you how to prove that you were advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to concerns related to COVID-19. I also explained to you how to prove that you were experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and seeking a medical diagnosis. I explained to you how to prove you are caring for an individual who was subject to a federal, state, or a local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19. I then explained to you how to prove you are caring for an individual who was advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine due to concerns related to COVID-19. And finally, I explained to you how to substantiate that you were caring for a son or daughter because the school or place of care for that child was closed or the child care provider for that child was unavailable due to COVID-19 precautions. This is it, folks. I really appreciate your attention. One thing I want to say, though, that we have covered at length the topic of a Form 7202 on another show where we actually showed you line by line instructions for that form. So I think it just makes sense to actually go back to that show and really sort of refresh your mind around that topic. All right. I'll talk to you another time. Thank you so much for your attention. Really appreciate it. Until next time, remember, stay marvelous.